ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतङ्गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. O Lord, please lead us from unreality to the reality, ignorance to the knowledge, and from mortality to the immortality. Om peace, peace, peace. My dear devotees, yoga, Ashtanga yoga, this has become very famous in the entire world. In the 19th century, Swami Vivekananda, who represented Sanatana Dharma, the universal religion, in Chicago's Parliament of Religions, after hearing his lectures on Vedanta and Sanatana Dharma, Yoga, Patanjali Yoga Sutras, etc., the whole world started turning towards Eastern philosophy. The whole world, again, once more, started thinking, okay, Eastern philosophy, and especially Indian philosophy, also can give something to us. Their philosophy is also having a worth to study, to practice. So such view was changed at the global level. For this, Swami Vivekananda is the primary cause. After that, many Indian spiritual gurus did go to the West and they did teach Vedanta and yoga. Now, in the entire world, the word yoga has become very famous. In every corner, in every country, there are so many yoga teachers, yoga classes, yoga courses, yoga study groups, yoga centers, so on and so forth. It is very welcoming, very encouraging. But at the same time, we should always keep it in mind that the yoga should not be restricted just for physical exercises or just to keep the physical fitness. Sharira madhyam kalu dharma sadhanam. In the Upanishads, there is a statement. The first dharma, the first duty is to keep the body fit. Of course, the body is a wonderful instrument given by the God so that we have to keep it fit so that we can enjoy our life and we can achieve whatever we want. We can reach our targets and goals. For that, the body is a primary instrument, no doubt. But at the same time, the yoga should not be confined just for physical exercise. Yoga has got wider usage. Yoga can help us at the physical level to keep the body fit, and at the pranic level, at the strength, level of strength, that is energy we say. So when we do pranayama, anuloma viloma pranayama or basti pranayama or whatever, what happens? We get more and more energy. How? By controlling the breath and by supply of oxygen more to our body and to our blood especially. And yoga also includes mental well-being. We have a lot of psychosomatic problems, depression, stress, then suicidal attempts, weak mind, all these things. Why? Because of, as I told, weak mind. So mental strength is very important for anyone's success and for anyone's happiest life or blissful life. So even the mental well-being is also very, very important, and yoga can help us. And the fourth is emotional well-being. Today, the science is accepting we are all emotional beings and emotional strength is very much required. Pro-reactive sometimes. When you say something, good advice to children sometimes, for adolescent people, adolescent children or youngsters, they react immediately. They don't accept. There can be many reasons. One of the primary reason is they don't want to accept what others say. Though it may be correct, it may be right, it may be rational. One of the cause is because of today's technology, because of today's mobile, internet, all these things, continuously internet surfacing, watching movies, and being busy in the social media, the scientific research is telling that we are mentally, emotively, we are becoming weak. That's the reason we don't have strength to control ourselves, our mind, our thoughts, our emotions, and we show pro-reactive. So we need emotional strength. And finally, it comes the spiritual strength. The spiritual strength is very much required. India, again and again, it has shown to the world this spiritual strength, the philosophical strength and spiritual strength. So when we say yoga or the necessity of yoga or the benefits of yoga and its practice, it can include all these things. But unfortunately, sometimes we or the yoga teachers has restricted the use of yoga to the physical level to keep the body fit, or at the most, some mental being, or just to have a peace from the hustle and bustle of life. No, it is not. So, in this connection, I thought we will discuss on 8 limbs of yoga, Ashtanga yoga, so that it can help the people to think in a different way or to understand the wider implications and benefits of yoga and especially Ashtanga yoga. Now, Ashta means 8, Anga means limbs, yoga. So, the 8 limbs of yoga. So, what are these 8 limbs of yoga? Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. So, what are these things? Probably, I don't know whether I'll be able to cover in this class. I will take in the next class, probably. But before going to this Ashtanga Yoga, what is the philosophical background of this Ashtanga Yoga? I would like to tell. I don't know how many of you people will be knowing this. The Ashtanga Yoga is a way of sadhana, practice to have a control over mind and to have the transcendental experience, to have the liberation, to attain Kaivalya, to attain Nirvana. And this Ashtanga Yoga has been given by the great philosopher, saint, world teacher called Patanjali thousands of years ago, at least probably 3,000 to 5,000 years before, or at least well accepted today is 2,500 years ago. 2.5 years or 3,000 years ago, the Patanjali, the great sage Patanjali, gave his sutras on yoga. So this Ashtanga Yoga is the part of that Patanjali Yoga Sutras. And this Patanjali Yoga Sutra is based on Sankhya philosophy. The Sankhya philosophy starts its inquiry saying that there is a suffering in the world and how to, if there is a suffering in the world, there is a cause for the suffering. If there is a cause, there can be solution also for the suffering. And what is the solution? Let us try to know. And the same idea is seen very clearly in the Ayurveda, the Indian medicine. It is a beautiful science, no doubt. In that Ayurveda, the 4 truths are there is a rogam asti, there is a disease, and roga hetuhu. There are causes for diseases. There is a cause for disease. And arogya, and there is a solution to maintain good life or good body, which can be free from all the diseases to larger extent, arogya. And vaishajya, that is, there is a path to cure the disease and maintain the good health. Roga, roga hetu, arogya, and vaishajya. And keeping the same way, model, the Sankhya philosophy also tells that, heya, there is suffering, there is a dukkha in this world. Why? Many people are suffered, I mean, many people had suffering, Many people are suffering, and many people may be suffering, will be suffering, maybe. So, the suffering in our life is a part of our life, is the part of this creation. We have to accept it. Okay, we have to accept it, no doubt. Then, should we live the life with the state of helplessness? No. Our aim, our goal should be to get rid of this suffering. So any philosophy, if you see, all philosophy starts with this inquiry: how to end the suffering, how to live the happiest life or blissful life, and what is the transcendental reality, what is the absolute reality. So among these, I mean, trying to find the answer for these questions, any philosophy has started. It starts. So similarly, one of the oldest philosophy in the world, even this Sankhya philosophy is the ancient philosophy, are older than the Vedanta philosophy, tells that it has got four noble truths like Ayurveda. What is the four noble truths? The first, it is called Heya, means there is suffering. Suffering exists. Heya Hetu. Hetu means cause of suffering. There is a suffering, fine. Then what is the cause for suffering? What is that cause of suffering? Once you know there is a problem, then you'll be able to know the solution also. For an example, when you go to a doctor, you got a particular problem. When you say that there is a problem, once he finds what is the cause for it, then you'll be able to give accordingly drugs or medicine. Isn't? So, Hana is there is a freedom from suffering. Yes, definitely we can get rid of this suffering. We can take away this suffering. We can check this suffering. And Hanopaya, there is a means to achieve the freedom. From what? From suffering. Hana Upaya. So the same thing you can see in the Buddha's philosophy. Buddha was a student, initially, Buddha was a student of Sankhya philosophy. His gurus came from Sankhya. That's the reason even he also started his philosophy, his teachings with the four noble truths, which are popularly known as Arya Sattani. What is that? Here he said Heya, suffering. He said Dukkha, Dukkha Masti. There is a sorrow in the world. And we all know that, most of you know that the popular story goes like this. He was a prince and he had not seen any sufferings in the whole of his life. Why? Because after his birth, a ascetic, a monk came to the Shuddhodana's palace, that is the father of Gautama Buddha or Siddhartha. He saw the child or child's horoscope and he said, either he will become the greatest monk or he will become one of the greatest king. But I think he will become the greatest monk, greatest ascetic. So when the father Shuddhodana heard the ascetic's future prediction, he thought if he comes to know the difficulties, he may get vairagya, the renunciation. So it is better he should not be seen. So basically in a palace, in the full arranged palace, his whole life till his middle age, I mean, till his youth, he grew. There were no old people at all in the palace. At least Siddhartha never saw them. And all the riches and all enjoyments, types of enjoyment were kept completely full to the extent possible for the prince Gautama, Siddhartha Gautama. Whereas one fine day, after his marriage, even after having a son, one fine day, Siddhartha Gautama asked his father, Shuddhodana, that can you allow me to go outside and to see the society? Reluctantly, he allowed him. And he also tried to keep all good people or healthy people with a good clothes, etc., in front of him, or at least in the main road. But fortunately or unfortunately, he saw three things. One is old aged person whose skin was sunken and having a stick, and with bent, he was walking. When he asks his charioteer or the driver, Sarathi, who is he? Why is he like this? Then he says, my lord, he has become old. Oh, in the old age, will I become like that? he says, the charioteer or the Sarathi says, yes, my lord. Then he sees one person who is afflicted with disease, leprosy or some disease. By seeing, he felt very bad. He asked, what is this? Then the Sarathi says, the driver says, my lord, he has got some disease, is the sick person. Oh, do I get some disease like this in future? Yes, my lord. And the third is dead person, dead body is. A dead body was taken to the cremation ground. Then he asked again the driver, what is this? Why is he not breathing? Why is he sleeping? And why the garlands and have put and they're carrying him? Then the driver, Sarathi says, my lord, he is dead. So it is a corpse. So they are taking it to just bury. Oh, do I also die? The Sarathi says, yes, my lord. No one is spared, even the king is not spared from the death. Whether it really happened in his life or it is a story we do not know, at least we believe that yes. But these three incidents, it provoked him to think, then what is the life? Then how can I be peaceful and blissful at all times? And how can I get rid of this all sufferings? And how can I be free eternally? That made him to leave the palace, take the life of ascetic. He did lot of austerities and he studied the Sankhya philosophy under teachers and he practiced extreme austerities. And afterwards he understood this is not the way to attain the truth and he took the middle path. After his realization, he said, he gave the four noble truths. What is that? One is dukkha. There is a pain, sorrow, or suffering in this world. Then dukkha samudaya. There is a cause of suffering, cause for suffering, that is trishna, he says. Then the third is nirodha. The suffering can be ended. Definitely there is an end to suffering. That is called nirvana, moksha, mukti, or whatever you say. And the fourth is, then what is the way out to attain that freedom, to attain that nirvana, to free from all the sufferings? He said, that is Ashtanga marga. Marga is the path or way, Ashta is 8, Anga is limbs. The way which has got, the path which has got 8 parts are 8 limbs. So these 4 noble truths which given by Lord Buddha, Gautama Buddha, is come from Sankhya philosophy. And this Ashtanga Yoga is the part of Yoga Sutras or Sankhya philosophy. So there is a suffering heya, there is a cause of suffering heya yetu, and there is a freedom from dukkha, that is hana, and hanopaya is there is a means to achieve the hana state or the free from the suffering state. So that's where yoga comes into picture. So yoga is the path, yoga is the means to end the suffering. I would like to stay happily, peacefully at all times. I want well-being, mindfulness, peaceful, blissful, ever-free person. All this thinking we have got. For this, yoga is one of the best path, one of the best means to attain all of this at all levels. And beautifully, the ancient scriptures of the world, which is called Vedas, in that Vedas, we see 20 Upanishads, which is specifically dedicated to yoga philosophy. And this yoga philosophy, the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, gives the systematic analysis or representation of the yoga philosophy. What are these sutras? Sutras are nothing but the formula. It is just to remember something. We keep some in the reminders. We write, okay, there is a meeting. I've got a company meeting at such and such a date and such a time. By seeing that, it reminds me, okay, there's a meeting I have to prepare. I should be in the in the meeting place beforehand. Everything it comes into picture. That is only remembrance. That doesn't give any complete narration. So in the olden days, since there was no printing press, there was no written books. So the whole philosophy was made in the formula form or capsule form so that these things were given. So it was easy to remember And by remembering these sutras, the entire philosophy, the entire description, narrations used to come into the disciple's mind or into the guru's mind. So to remember these things easily, it was given in the capsule form or in the formula form. And this Patanjali Sutra has got four padas, four parts: Samadhi Pada, Sadhana Pada, Vibhuti Pada, Kaivalya Pada. Anyhow, I will not go much details into all these things. And what is this yoga and why do we need yoga? They say that why do we need yoga? Because to end the suffering. And in the ancient 5,000 or 10,000 years before, the Rig Veda comes into existence, as per the Western authors. In the Rig Veda, they say, Yunjate mana uta yunjate diyo vipaha. Wise people unite their minds on God, meditating upon the God to get joy, peace, happiness, or bliss. Means yoga means joining, joining the individual soul or embedded soul with the supreme soul or Parabrahman. That is the one meaning of the yoga. Yoga means joining. Joining means we need two things. So, what are the two things? One thing is individual self, the other thing is supreme self. So, merging the individual self with the supreme self. Just like a river is getting merged with the sea. All rivers, they tend to move towards the sea in the ocean. So, any river merging with the ocean means a smaller part of the water body is merging with the bigger part of the water body, river and sea. So, similarly, the individual self, individual soul, individual spirit is merging with the supreme soul. That is what yoga. Yoga is joining. The other is yoga means separation. Separation of what? Separation from Purusha and Prakriti. Here, Purusha means self, Atman, consciousness, and Prakriti means the whole world and its products. This is where Patanjali Yoga Sutras first time Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Nirodha means separation, complete cessation. Complete cessation, what happens? It will separate. Separate from who are getting separated, from what they are getting separated. The Purusha, the self, the Atman is getting separated from the Prakriti. Is it physical separation then? No, it is the mental separation. At the thought level, there is a separation. What do we mean by that? By mistake, the Purusha, the Atman is thinking that it is he or she is the product of Prakriti. Here, Purusha means it is not masculine gender, it is called self. It is a neutral gender. By mistaking, I am thinking that I am body, I am mind, I am emotions, I am house, I am things, etc., etc. So, to differentiate, to discriminate, I am the self or Purusha and I am not this body, mind, etc. That's where we need yoga. Yoga means here it is splitting. So that's where Patanjali Yoga Sutras comes into picture. And that is seen very clearly. This shade of meaning is seen very clearly in the Kata Upanishad. Tam yogam iti manyate stiram indriya dharanam. Means when we are able to control our sense organs and able to study and the dissolvement of the mind, and mind is made to concentrate upon the Atman inward, that is yoga. So basically, mind turns inward and it tries to know the truth by separating itself from the Prakriti. That's where yoga comes into picture. Then who is the fit person to practice this yoga? Is only prescribed to a particular religion, particular nationality, particular ethnicity, or particular social group, or particular group who has got economical status? No, anyone can practice this yoga. Everyone is competent. Only we should have a desire and we should properly practice it. Anyone can, irrespective of caste, creed, sex, economical status, social status, religion, anyone can practice. By that, The ultimate aim and goal of the yoga is not the physical fitness, rather, it is the spiritual fitness. It is attaining the complete freedom. When war happened between two countries, one country will win, so it is free. So it was undergoing the colonization, just like English people colonized Irish people. 6 to 8 centuries there was a continuous war. Afterwards, Irish people became free. But there is no rule, or there we cannot say that after some time, either from England or from any other country, any part of the globe, again they will not attack Irish people. As of now, with God's grace, that yes, Ireland is free and Irish people are free, but anytime anything can happen. But whereas in the freedom which the spirituality or the yoga speaks, it is about the absolute freedom. Means once you attain, then there will be no more problem and you'll be completely free. That is, eternally you will be free. So for that freedom, to attain that freedom, to gain that freedom, the yoga is into practice. Yoga helps as a means to attain that freedom, complete freedom, perfect freedom, or eternal freedom. So what is the efficacy of yoga? What is the usefulness of yoga? What is the necessity of yoga is very clearly you can understand. Fine. Then what is the thing which is stopping us to understand all these things? It is all of mind. Mind is just like a lake. So for an example, in the lake, the water is Glendalough. If you go, there's a beautiful lake. And there the lake is very calm, no ripples. Then you'll be able, if there's a sunlight, good amount of sunlight, then you'll be able to see the bottom of that particular lake. Now suddenly someone threw 2 or 3, 4 stone. I mean 3 or 4 youngsters, they threw stone into that lake. Then there were ripples. When there were ripples, then a person, whoever is standing there, he or she will not be able to see the bottom of that lake. Why? Because there are ripples in the water. So every thought is a ripple in the mind. And there are hundreds of thousands of ripples in the mind, consciously, unconsciously in our mind. That's why we are unable to understand who am I. So the yoga is a technique by which we have to cessation, we have to control over the mind. Once mind is controlled, means what? When our thoughts are under our control, then with that concentrated mind, if you focus that mind on any particular object, it reveals the truth. That's what it happens in scientists. For so many years, so many months, they'll be thinking the same thing again and again and again and again. Their mind will be concentrated on a particular object, on a particular concept, on a particular idea. At some point of time, the nature reveals its truth. The particular object reveals its truth, what it is. It is possible for anyone and everyone because of the concentration, concentrated mind. So to have that concentration, we need yoga. And that's the reason. Yogaschitta vritti nirodha. Here, nirodha means controlling of the modifications of the mind, cessation of the modifications of the mind. And sometimes people say it is a manonasha. Means what? Destroying the mind. It is very wrong concept, a wrong idea, or limited idea. It is not destroying the mind. It is not completely stopping the mind. Rather, it is having a mastery over the mind. Nirodha means self-mastery. What do you mean by self-mastery, Swamiji? Self-mastery means we should have a control on our mind. When I feel, when I want to think, when I desire, I can allow the mind to think and the mind can have some thoughts. When I don't want, I should have a control on the mind. Mind, I say, don't think, then mind should stop thinking. So to have a self-mastery, yoga helps. That is what called Nirodha. Many people, they come and ask, Swamiji, how can I stop thinking? I say, better not. Why? You will become an inert object. The rock never thinks. And you also don't want to think like that. It is, I mean, there is no wonder, I mean, there is no use to have to attain that state where I don't think at all. No, that is not the game and goal of yoga. Aim and goal of yoga is nirodha. Nirodha means what? Self mastery. destruction of the tendency in the mind to rise in the forms of the waves without our control over it. Now, even I want to control, I am not able to control for a long time, even shorter time. There are so many thoughts coming and going and coming and going. That's the reason many people suffer from the sleeplessness. They feel very difficult to have a sleep. Why? Because their mind is disturbed. What? Because they have got so many thoughts, unwanted thoughts. So 10,000 thoughts has to be reduced to 5,000, 3,000, 2,000, 1,000, 999, 900, 800, 600, 500, 300, 200, 100, 50, 30, 20, 10, 5, 3, 2, 1. So to attain that state, we have to practice meditation. We have to do yoga. So yoga chitta vritti nirodha means it is splitting ourselves from Purusha and Prakriti. The nirodha means it is not cessation, rather the real meaning is self-mastery. To have the control, to have the self-control, control on complete control over the mind, that's why we need yoga. Once it is achieved, you can attain anything and everything in the empirical field and also in the spiritual field. Now, let me go to into this four noble truths before getting into the Ashtanga Yoga. Heya. Heya means what? Which has to be avoided. Which has to be avoided? Dukkha has to be avoided. Sorrow has to be avoided. Suffering has to be avoided. And diseases has to be avoided. You tell me, who doesn't want to avoid suffering? Who doesn't want to avoid sorrow? Oh, we all want to avoid Swamiji, but it is not becoming possible. It is becoming a mirage like. Probably, I don't think it is possible, ever possible. Many people do make such comments. The Sankhya is telling that this dukkha, cause or suffering has to be avoided. And the explanation is given is heyam dukkham anagatam. Means heyam, what is heya, which has to be avoided? Dukkha has to be avoided. The cause of, the suffering has to be avoided. Sorrow has to be avoided. What type of sorrow? Anagatam. The future suffering has to be avoided. The future sorrow has to be avoided. This anagatam is a very important word which we should think. Many people won't think about it. Because of my past actions, I'm suffering, or I have got a lot of sufferings in my past days, past life, or past years. Now, many people keep on thinking about it. They feel depressed. They brood on that and they feel helplessness. They feel rejected. They feel pessimistic. Whatever thing has happened, you can't change. You can't do anything about it. Better, we should forget it. Okay, it has happened, fine. You should accept and forget it. And present days, okay, at present I'm suffering. Okay, there can be the reason of past life, past actions, or because some etc. Some people, the reason is some people, you may all say fine, but at present you are, whatever you are, it is happening, you don't have much control on it. Only according to the Sankhya, or according to even the Patanjali, he says that whatever the future cause of suffering, future sorrow can be avoided by present mindful living, by conscious living, by conscious activity, by doing right thing always. By that we can avoid the suffering, we can avoid the sorrow. So here he's not talking about the past suffering and he's not talking about the present suffering, he's telling about the future suffering. That means he's against the mindfulness? No. No, he is telling that whatever the past has happened, you can't do it, and the present is the resultant of your past actions. You can't have much control on it better. So it is better just to have a mindful living, conscious living, and you can probably try to have a control on the present suffering. And more than that, when you take care of your life and your mind, etc., practices, then you can avoid the future suffering. That is what according to Patanjali. So then the sorrow and suffering we speak, there are three types of suffering according to the Vedanta and Indian philosophy. Any type of suffering from our birth to death, till death, all sufferings as categorized in three groups at the broad canvas. What is that? One is Adi Bhautika, physical suffering, external suffering, because of heavy rains, because of drought, because of famine, and because of temperature. in Europe in this year, every one of us, we struggled with the rise in temperature. And in London and in Norway, I think Spain and all, they had a very scorchy sun. They all suffered, struggled a lot. Even in the news and all, we were saying that whole Europe is suffering from the hot sun. So this is called physical sufferings. I mean, diseases, you can say all these things. Then Adi Daivika, the suffering, the sorrows which is occurred by demigods, gods and goddesses, and by natural calamities, all these things are termed as Adi Daivika suffering. The third is Adhyatmika suffering. Adhyatmika suffering is the suffering or sorrow which is caused by myself because of my actions, because of my attitude, because of my thoughts, because of my perceptions, because of my actions, whatever the sorrow and suffering is getting caused, that is called Adhyatmika. You see, all types of suffering comes into these three types of suffering. This suffering, this sorrow has to be avoided. That's why we need yoga. Then, heya yetu. Okay, fine. We know that there is a suffering or sorrow. Fine. If there is something, then there should be some cause. If an animal, like if a human being is there, that means his parents are cause for his birth, for his existence. So similarly, for this suffering is existing, if suffering exists, then there should be a cause for that suffering, isn't it? So what is that cause for suffering? Cause of misery. So according to the Patanjali, which is based on Sankhya philosophy, it is telling that drushtyayoho sanyoga heyayetuhu. That comes in Patanjali Yoga Sutras 2.17. Means the cause of that suffering which is to be avoided is the junction of the seer and the seen. Seer, the Purusha, the consciousness, the awareness, the pure consciousness is called seer, that is Purusha. The Atman or Brahman we say in Vedanta. Then the seen, whatever the whole world, the whole entire universe and its products, the elements, the water and the things which we are using for enjoyment and for our life in day to day. The whole world and its objects is called seen, drushya. I think here Purusha is thinking that his body, he or she is body, or mind, or organs, or the house, or the some objects, etc., etc. That's the reason we are suffering. And why it is happening? Because of ignorance. I am thinking I am the body, but I am not the body. I am thinking I am the mind, but I am not the mind. I am thinking that I am the emotions, but the emotions are, I am not the emotions. I'm thinking something happens to my house. Immediately I start crying because as if it has happened to me only. But house belongs to me, no doubt, but I am not the house. Say tomorrow, let God forbid, let not happen. In here, wherever the place you are living, there's a torrents of rain and there was a flood. So will you say that, okay, my water is coming into my house, I will protect my house, otherwise I will not go? Then the people say, better you take care of yourself, otherwise you may be drowned. If that state comes, then definitely you may feel bad, no doubt, but you will get away. You will go to some other place where you will be protected, where you can have a safe stay, leaving your house. Why? Because you can leave the house, but you cannot leave your life. But unfortunately, many times we get attached to the external things as if I am that we feel. That's why we suffer. So you say that I own a house, but I am not the house. I own a vehicle, but I am not the vehicle. So this knowledge we should get, and that should be put into practice. That is what called heya hetu. And the third is hana. And heyetu is also called avidya, the ignorance. Because of ignorance, we are suffering. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of science, ignorance of physics, ignorance of geography, ignorance of language. No, ignorance of oneself. Who am I? That's why Socrates said, know thyself. Hana means freedom. Freedom from dukkha, freedom from suffering, freedom from sorrow. What happens when it is? Hana, when it is achieved that freedom is tad abhavat sanyoga abhavo hanam tad drushu tad drushyoho kaivalyam. There being absence of that ignorance, there is absence of junction, which is the thing to be avoided. That is the independent of the seer. Means I am not the seen, I am the seer. I am the Purusha, I am not the Prakriti. So that Gnana, Aham Purushaha, I am the Purusha, I am the Atman self, I am not this body, I am not this world or its objects. Once I get the knowledge, once I separate myself from this whole world and its objects evolutes, then I can be the free person. There will be no suffering at all. And this is seen in all the great people's life, in Buddha's life, in Vivekananda's life, Ramakrishna's life, Jesus' life, all the great saints, prophets, incarnations, they were able to practice that witness. Just one example, you are staying outside. Some people came, they were laughing and they went. Some people, they were crying and they were moving. Some people were shouting and they were moving. Just you were sitting on the terrace of the house and just you were viewing. You were not disturbed because you don't have any affinity towards them. You were just a witness. Whereas, but if in that same group, if your known people were there, your friends were there, relatives were there, then you were getting disturbed. You were getting moved. You would have got moved. Why? Because of the attachment. Oh, he is my person. He or she is mine. If you can practice witness, then you will be the free person. That's what is called Hana. So real knowledge we need is. Then what is this Hana Upaya? Here comes Ashtanga Yoga into practice, into the thing. Probably now you will be knowing that why I took all these details. Hana Upaya. Hana is freedom, free state, and Upaya is the way to attain that freedom, to attain that free state. What is that Upaya? What is that methodology? What is that means? Or what is the way to attain that freedom? To end the suffering, to avoid the sorrow or suffering, to end the sorrow or suffering, he say, Viveka Kyatira Viplava Hanopaya. The means of destruction of ignorance is unbroken practice of discrimination. It is a discriminating knowledge of Chitta and Purusha. Means to remove the ignorance and to know that I am the Purusha and I am different from Prakriti. That is what Viveka Kyati. And to attain this Viveka Kyati, what are the various means? So according to Patanjali, there are three various means. Three various means. One is Abhyasa and Vairagya. Abhyasa is practice, Vairagya is renunciation. Practice the mindfulness, practice the conscious, that I am conscious. Consciously, we are unconscious, but consciously, we should be conscious. That's what Abhyasa. All practice good habits, good thoughts, nurture the good thoughts. Vairagya. Don't nurture wrong thoughts, wicked thoughts. Don't perform bad actions. Don't feel bad. I mean, don't feel bad for someone else. Oh, he should die, he should happen something, etc., etc. With compassion, we should never feel for anyone. So that's what Abhyasa and Vairagya. The whole spiritual life can be embedded in these two words. Even in Bhagavad Gita, Shri Krishna speaks about this Abhyasa and Vairagya. Fine. So this is for Uttamadhikari statements. For the best people among the spiritual aspirants, there are the best spiritual aspirants. For the best spiritual aspirants, Abhyasa and Vairagya is described. Now you may say, Swami, I think I may not be the best person. Still, I have to enable many things. So I may be a mediocre person. Then for me, what is the way out to attain this freedom? To to avoid the suffering, to be free? They say, yes, for the mediocre person, Madhyamadhikari, for him, it is called Kriya Yoga. Oh, what is this Kriya Yoga? Tapaha, tapas, swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhana, Kriya Yoga. In the second chapter, first sutra itself tells. What is that? Austerities, penance, and swadhyaya, studying scriptures or studying oneself, and Ishvara Pranidhana. Ishvara Pranidhana is surrendering to the Lord or surrendering to the divine. These are the three things, three steps or three parts of the Kriya Yoga. One is austerities, the other is self study or scriptural study, and the third is surrendering oneself to the Lord or divine. This is what Kriya, it constitutes Kriya Yoga. It is mediocre for, this is, prescribed for mediocre spiritual aspirants. Now, someone may say, Swamiji, I am the beginner. I've just started all my spiritual life. I don't think even I'm mediocre. I've got a lot of backlog, lot of big bundle I have carrying my own thoughts, ideas, blah, 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 all these things. I think I'm a beginner. I'm a Manda Adhikari. So what do you think that? Is the Patanjali or is the yoga philosophy or Sankhya philosophy, does it give anything for us? They say Ashtanga Yoga. So for the beginner, for the slow person, for the Manda Adhikari, the Ashtanga Yoga has been prescribed. Yama, Niyama, Pranayama, Asana, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. These are the 8 limbs of yoga, which is the part of Hanopaya. And this is prescribed for the Manda Adhikaris, for the beginners. I think now you understood the context of Kriya Yoga and how this Kriya Yoga came into existence. But there are differences of opinion here. Though initially, if you see in the Patanjali Sutra, Patanjali has never described or mentioned directly that this Ashtanga Yoga is for the for the beginners or for the Mandadhikaris. But the next commentators who have come and whoever given the commentaries on the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, since otherwise we can't understand, the commentators have classified these three sadhanas into for three different people. Like Vachaspati Mishra, one of the greatest philosopher, greatest knowledgeable person, he says that liberation is incorporated in Ashtanga Yoga only. By mere Ashtanga Yoga, one can attain liberation. There is no other thing is required in the Ashtanga Yoga. All other means are included, so Ashtanga Yoga is enough. But Vijnana Bhikshu, one of the greatest philosopher of yoga philosophy, he says that no, for Yoga Ruda, that is for Uttama Sadhaka, for the best Sadhaka, spiritual aspirant, then Abhyas and Vairagya is told. And for the Yoga Yunja means one who is mediocre in the yoga practice, in the spiritual life, for that Kriya Yoga has been prescribed by Patanjali. And for the who is desirous of Yoga Rurukshu, one who is the beginner and one who is desirous of yoga, means for freedom, for a beginner and for the Mandadhikari, for a slow spiritual aspirant, the Ashtanga Yoga is prescribed. There are few different of opinions, but anyhow, we need not to bother about it. But Ashtanga Yoga by practice, we can attain the physical well-being, mental well-being, spiritual well-being, emotional well-being, intellectual well-being also. That's the reason it is the means for self-realization. It is the means for ending the sorrow or suffering which all we want. So that's the reason we need to practice Ashtanga Yoga. That's the reason we need Ashtanga Yoga. So Ashtanga Yoga here means it is only physical asanas, and it is only to keep our body fit and to have little calmness, to have little equanimity of the mind, to lead the external life or empirical life to the large extent possible. No, yoga has got lot wider denotation and connotation, that we should think yoga is to attain the complete freedom, perfect freedom from the suffering, from the sorrow. It is not just physical fitness or mental fitness, it is all types of fitness are included here. So we should understand and we should start practicing to end the suffering and to attain the freedom or mukti or kaivalya or nirvana or moksha. Let the great sage Patanjali and greatest incarnation Sri Ramakrishna bless all of us, so that let us try to go in this path and attain the complete freedom, and so that we'll be free from this cycle of birth and death, and we'll be free from cycle of sufferings. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Rama Krishna Arpanamastu.